Hello and thank you for joining us. The death toll in Iran has skyrocketed. A source inside the country tells CBS News that at least 12,000 people, possibly up to 20,000, have been killed amid massive anti-government protests. That number is based on reports from medical officials across the country. Another source in Washington tells us the death toll is likely between 10 and 12,000. Getting accurate information from Iran has been its own challenge. The Iranian government shut off the internet 5 days ago. Phone lines have been unreliable, although some calls are getting through. The White House keeping an eye on all of this. President Trump has said he would step in if the regime killed peaceful protesters. Earlier today, his national security team presented him with potential military options for Iran. We begin tonight with CBS News senior foreign correspondent Elizabeth Palmer reporting on the unrest.
Things are quiet today in Iran. Phones are now back on and working sporadically after all communication had been cut on Friday night. Information is trickling out now about hundreds, probably thousands of protesters killed by the security forces. Video apparently smuggled out of the country shows families on Saturday morning looking at bodies in the compound of the Tehran medical examiner, searching for their loved ones who'd been killed in protests the night before, Friday night. We counted between 350 and 400 bodies in this location alone, clearly wounded and killed by bullets. In Tehran, schools and universities are closed. The official reason is air pollution and saving energy, but of course, no one believes that. The capital is teeming with security, police and paramilitaries who are stopping people on the street, especially young people, and searching them physically and also checking their phones for signs that they were involved in the protests. One contact also told me that security officers have been visiting hospitals, demanding that medical staff give up the names and phone numbers of wounded protesters that they had treated. For the Iranian opposition, this is a lethal disappointment. Many millions of people are now watching to see what President Trump might do next. But the regime has won this round. It does remain firmly in power. Back to you.
Elizabeth Palmer, thank you. The world is watching as President Trump decides how he will respond to the protests in Iran. CBS Evening News anchor Tony Dokoupil asked the president about that in a network-exclusive interview from Dearborn, Michigan.
Americans woke up this morning and they saw that you said help is on the way.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Well, there's a lot of help on the way and in different forms, including economic help from our standpoint, and not going to help Iran very much. And you know, we put Iran out of business with their nuclear capacity, and now, depending on what's actually happening, nobody's been able to give us accurate numbers about how many people they've killed.
Well, on that point,
but it looks
Mr.
like
President,
it could be a pretty substantial number, and that's going to be a lot of problems for them.
a lot of problems. On that point, you did say the U.S. would get involved if Iran started killing protesters.
Yeah.
They have, by the many thousands, according to reports.
Well, we'll see what that is. I've heard two numbers, but we'll see what that is.
Well, now we're hearing that they're going to start hanging protesters tomorrow. So it comes back to the question, have they crossed your red line, or has the line moved?
I haven't heard about the hanging. If they hang them, you're going to see some things that I don't know what where you come from and what your thought process is, but you'll perhaps be very happy.
What do you mean by that?
We will take very strong action. If they do such a thing, we will take very strong action.
And this strong action you're talking about, what's the end game?
The end game is to win. I like winning.
How do you define that in Iran?
Well, let's define it in Venezuela. Let's define it with al-Baghdadi. He was wiped out. Let's define it with Soleimani. And let's define it in Iran, where he wiped out their Iran nuclear threat in a period of about 15 minutes once the B-2s got there. And that was a complete obliteration, as it turns out, which is what I said initially. Then some questioned it, and they said, you know, Trump was right. So we've been right about everything. We don't want to see what's happening in Iran happen. And, you know, if they want to have protests, that's one thing. When they start killing thousands of people, and now you're telling me about hanging, we'll see how that works out for them. It's not going to work out good.
You can watch more of Tony Dokoupil's network-exclusive interview with President Trump on the CBS Evening News on CBS and Paramount+. Let's bring in CBS News national security coordinating producer James LaPorta. James, what are the range of options being discussed by the White House?
Sure. Thanks for having me tonight. So the U.S. president has a spectrum of military options when it comes to Iran. That on both the low end and the high end. On the low end, he could reposition forces and deter Iran's missile defenses and deter attacks if the U.S. was to conduct any actions in the region. He can also lethally target military facilities. He could initiate a cyber strike. But the thing that stood out to me from our sourcing and what the president was briefed on was he was briefed on that the U.S. military could take either could conduct, cyber operations or psychological operations against Iran. So cyber operations would mean disrupting Iranian government networks, their communications, how Iran, their decision-making processing systems, targeting their digital infrastructure. So, for instance, they could target their security forces and weaken the regime's ability to track and suppress dissent. For psychological operations, that would focus on shaping what Iranians hear and believe, pushing alternative narratives, amplifying critical voices, undermining trust in state-run media to influence public perception without using conventional force.